Ladies and gentlemen, join me now in welcoming our political leader, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Keith Rowley.
Yes, I will make it. Even though the road is long, no matter what come on, I will make it. Yes, I will make it. Remember the days of toting water, anytime that you have to pay. Or when people pass and they see you, oh my Lord, used to feel that shame. Wondering if this lasts forever, wondering when you will feel proud. If it's one thing that he didn't tell me, there is sunrise after each cloud. I say, even though the road is long, no matter what come, I know I will make it. Hey, oh Lord, I will make it. Even though.
Thank you very much, the chairperson of tonight's proceedings here in Barataria South Secondary School, Deputy Political Leader Mrs. Julian Williams, other party officers, my cabinet colleagues, members of the Senate, members of council here in Sawa Laventil, and those of you from Tonapuna, Piako, and nearby communities, my cabinet colleague, Minister of Finance, who is Member of Parliament for Diego Martin Northeast, Mr. Colin Imbert, the Member of Parliament for Laventil West, Minister in the Office of the Attorney General, Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, Minister of Sport and Minister of Culture and the Arts, which is Nyan Gatsby Dolly. Thank you very much for your welcome to the community of Sawa and Laventil. And thank you all members of the national community for coming out in your large numbers like you have here again tonight, and for the tens of thousands of you who are listening to us on the national airwaves. Ladies and gentlemen, I came here to talk to you about the performance of the government. But permit me a little time to talk to you about this place that I'm from. Some of you, if not all of you, would know that I'm from Tobago. Tobago has a population of about 65,000 people. And in the scheme of things, in the overall population of 1.3 million, the Tobago population of 65,000 is a drop in the national ocean. But in that community where I was born and where I was raised, our standards and our values have always been our treasure. And that community knew poverty. That community knows standards and values. And that community is one proud place in Trinidad and Tobago. And in making contributions to the national development, there are many ways that one can measure it. But we in Tobago, we are proud of what we've produced and what we've sent to Trinidad. We've produced from that small community a president. We produced 2 prime ministers. We produced 2 attorneys general. We produced a governor of the central bank. We produced the best footballer this country has ever produced, Dwight York. We've produced, in the last Olympics, if my memory serves me right, the largest contingent in our Olympic team from any part of this country came from Tobago. We've produced a number of doctors, nurses, teachers, farmers, fishermen. We've produced a body of proud citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. We did so, and we continue to do so. So when the head of the Mahasabha sees it fit to sit down in front of his microphone and make a vid blog to broadcast to the world that Tobagonian men are lazy rapists, I take objection to that. And I wait to see who else in this national community will tell Satmaraj, this time you have gone too far. This time, I wait to see if there's anybody in the Hindu community brave enough or strong enough to stand on principle and tell Satmaraj, you are unfit to lead any part of the community in Trinidad and Tobago. Because when a leader of a huge part of the country could tell the world that paying for a ferry to work between Trinidad and Tobago, to carry Trinidadians to Tobago, and to bring Tobagonians from Tobago to Trinidad, it's a link. If you go into Point 14, you go on the road. The road costs billions of dollars. You go into Arima, you go on the road costs billions of dollars. If you go into Tobago, you either fly in the air or you go on the water, and there's a cost to it. So why should Satmaraj judge us and throw aspersions on any sort of criminal conduct because the state is paying for transport between Trinidad and Tobago? Tonight, I want to say again, because I've said it before, this obsession with blaming and naming black people as rapists and run by their pelvis is not a thing for 2019. In 2015, I was opposition leader, and the Hansard will show that the Prime Minister and the leader of government business organized to put on Hansard that the opposition leader was a rapist. Today, the leader of the Mahasabha goes one mile further. Tobagonians are lazy rapists. And this country accepts that because it's sad. If I had said that about anybody in this country, everybody else would have known how to respond to that. I have not heard the leader of the opposition because she can't say a word, because she's the one who had organized the vanilla slander. The UNC can't say a word because that was supposed to be their election strategy. So talks are talk. That is her comment. Ladies and gentlemen, our country has the potential to go to higher heights. But those are the people and those are the things that keep pulling us down all the time. All the time. Tonight, I simply want to say to you that we are not enjoying our best times as a country, as a people, because there are difficulties to overcome. But if you look at how we are dealing with our difficulties, you will have that confidence that our future is assured and our future is bright. Notwithstanding what others might want to tell you and how they might want to present to you our circumstance. Ladies and gentlemen, Trinidad and Tobago is handling its very difficult situation in a very competent way. The Minister of Finance just mentioned a few of the things that he is seeing us embarking upon, and much of it would be driven in the development program by loan funding. But as I said to you before, loans are a good thing as long as you have the ability to repay. So once we keep our eye on the ability to repay, and secondly and most importantly, once we use the money that we borrow to develop the country, it is an investment in our future. If the money that you borrow is spent on wasteful items, or worse, if it is stolen by those who have the opportunity to steal it, then you get in trouble. Because you borrow the money, you got it spent, it did nothing for you, and you have it to repay. Let me give you one example. Is that Couva Hospital? The new Couva Hospital? We have borrowed $1.5 billion to establish that facility. Nothing wrong with that. You borrow to build. You would have heard, after I did that broadcast a few months ago to tell you how our finances went, and I showed you the garbage truck into which $25 billion was sucked in from cash that we had that was spent. The leader of the opposition jumped out and said, but he can't say that. We built hospital, so therefore that's where the money went. What she was not telling you is that she was trying to fool you. Yes, we built a hospital, but don't use it to account for the money. The hospital was built on loan fund, so it cannot be established on the money you spent from the revenue. If you had used the revenue to build the hospital, there wouldn't be a $1.5 billion debt to pay for it now. So stop trying to fool people. There are too many schools in this country. But worse, of the $1.5 billion, 500 million went into services and consultancies. I want to ask you again, if you're building a house, will you spend 1/3 of the money paying the architect and the QS and those who help you put it together, and then the house itself only costs 2/3, the real actual expense on the building? So that hospital, $1 billion spent on the hospital, and $500 million on the lucky people who got the jobs or the opportunities to get out of it. And when you borrow and you spend money like that, that's when you get into trouble. We, under this government, we are going to build a hospital like the one in Point Fortin that's costing us $1 billion. We're building the same thing in Sangre Grande, and as of now, we can tell you, we are aiming to build it for less, because there's nobody in this government that is asking for a percentage of what the hospital cost. So contractors don't have to factor into their tender what they have to pay to get the contract. Simple and straightforward. If you have a job that the actual job costs $1 million, but you have to pay 10 or 20 or 30% to somebody to get the job, then you will charge that, whatever it is, into the price. And then, of course, who pays that money in the end? You, the taxpayer. Because as long as the price is inflated to cover those corrupt costs, it is you, the taxpayer, paying it in any case. So when you see them showing off with their palace and their Rolls Royce and their, however they spend their money, and dig a hole and put it in the ground in barrels, when you see that, it's you paying for that. And the only difference between then and now is because one of the things that we have done since we have come into office is to bring some element of sobriety and honesty to the conduct of public business, and we have declared war on corruption in Trinidad and Tobago. And that reflects itself in a reduced price for the goods and service I saw the opposition leader, must be 2 or 3 nights in a row now. Every night. It's Faris, 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 Faris. You know what Faris has done? He owns a business. He owns a business, he and his family, that own property. And one of those properties was identified by a state agency, and the state rented it on terms that are very favorable. Nobody's giving him a check for nothing. He's providing something for which he's being paid, his company. And all steps were taken to ensure that he did not influence the selection or the cost and value arrangements. And that is so upsetting to the opposition leader. She now cannot sleep. She dreams Faris, she wakes Faris, she talks Faris. Because all of a sudden, this Prime Minister, who oversaw the expenditure that we have all known for the last 5 years, 2010 to 2015, had no problem with taxpayers' money being frittered away, being stolen, being wasted, but all of a sudden, everything that they talk about is looking for an example. I tell you something, the reason why they're looking so hard for a mark to bust on this government is because this government is a straight up and honest government, and marks hard to find. And it is because we are saying to you, the people, that we are building a new society. We are rejecting the corruption that has become hallmark in Trinidad and Tobago, where if you have to go to customs, the officer wants something. You go to the police, he charges you. After he charges you, you want something to throw away the case. And they come to the parliament and tell you, you can't put that in the law because the police will do this, and the customs will do that, and the fire officer will do that, all saying to you, expect corrupt action on the part of public officials. Well, I want to tell you all something. When I became a PNM candidate in 1981, Kamaluddin Mohammed gave us a lecture, those of us who were new, and he said to us, the easiest election to win is the first one. Because after that, you begin to make enemies. Because people will support you to give you a chance. And then they expect you to give them this and to give them that and to do this. And as you don't do it, you keep making enemies. Well, I intend to make a hell of a lot of enemies in Trinidad and Tobago. And at the end of the day, we'll count the numbers. But I say to you, I do that in the full knowledge, that is my view, that the vast majority of people in Trinidad and Tobago are decent, right-thinking people, and they will support a change for the better. We must come to a place where we can expect that if you go to the customs officer is an honest public servant who is there to serve you and to do so within the law. We must come to a place where if a police officer comes to you, you can see that uniform and you can feel safe that he's an honest officer who is there to serve you. You must come to a place where you elect somebody to office and they hold office and they're looking after your affairs and they're not there to take kickbacks and to take 10% and 20% and to get rich the 3 years they're in office. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the way it is now in this country, I can tell you after 3.5 years of Prime Minister in this country, if you go to buy a paper clip in this country, somebody wants something. We are going to change that. And the way we change that is to put a new structure in place and call the country to support it. And that is why we are in the parliament. Putting in the parliament, and it was passed in the Senate tonight, it's coming back to the lower house on Tuesday for 1 or 2 little amendments to be made, and then it's going to be proclaimed into law instantly. Where if you find yourself under criminal observation from which you have been profiting and you can only explain it by criminality, then the law is there for the public officers whose job it is to ask the question, and when the questions cannot be answered, then you are not to prosper from your criminal conduct. That is the law in Sri Lanka. And if you see how the UNC fighting that, you would believe is the birthright to take it away. You would believe that somebody left it in a will for them and we come to take it away. What we are putting in place is a legal structure to allow the state to go after persons who have obtained their wealth through criminal conduct, especially those who have been put in positions of trust and who have abused that trust by stealing from the people. They took the position up front that they will not support that law being put on the law books. But certainly, you, the people, stood up and said, we want it. We're standing with the government. That's what I expected you to do. And when they realized it was all gone, they tried to encourage us. Up to tonight, the very last thing they did in the Senate tonight, even after it was passed in the House, it goes to the Senate. The last thing they did tonight is Wade Mark trying to ask the Attorney General to put the law, put a preamble that says it requires a 3/5 majority. And if Paris was so stupid to do that, when it comes to the vote, 10 minutes after, they vote against it. And you would have heard that the law was defeated. What manner of people are these? And this is after it passed the leadership in the law house, debate in the house, committee in public view on television, and they voted for it unanimously, they say. When it goes to the Senate, they still have a trap. Put a preamble of 3/5 majority, which bring their votes into play. And then when the vote is called, they just remain silent. Don't even have to vote against it. Just remain silent. Because once it requires a 3/5 majority, they have to vote yes. If they just remain silent and don't vote yes, they could say we didn't vote against it, but the bill fall. And after they did that in the lower house, trying to tell you stupidness about the reason why they vote for it is because Kamala was so brilliant and they make amendments and the law is now good. Poppycock, as Daily Knock will say. They voted for it only because it was going to be passed by the government's vote alone, because it did not require a 3/5 majority. And what they have been doing is trying to play to the gallery. Today I watched them for the whole day. From 10 o'clock this morning till 7 o'clock tonight, they sat in the Senate and they nitpick, trying to give you the impression to be able to say, when they vote for it, is because they fixed the bill. A comma here, a T to be crossed here, an amendment here, 15 minutes discussing the amendment, then the amendment falls. Then when it's not Wade Mark, it's Ramdeen. When it's not Ramdeen, it's Hussein, and they're playing tag team for the whole day. At the end of it, nothing has changed. The bill is now on its way to become law. But I tell you one thing, we will do this every time we have to do it. And we are going to rely on you, the people, because it was you, the people, when the UNC put a clause in the law to facilitate corruption of the worst kind in this country and use the parliament to do it. I call you, the people, out. Well, they're calling out a march on Faris sometime next week. I expect that they expect you to be there. Because as far as they're concerned, that's the big issue in the country. Our big issue is that now that this law is passed, where you can go after the unexplained wealth, and if they cannot explain it, it will be forfeited. Everybody knows that there are some people in this country who know who did what. We are now going to go to the parliament and we're going to put before the parliament a whistleblower law. And it will be meant to let those who know to tell the authorities and be protected by law. That will require a special majority. Now we shall see them for what they are. They couldn't block this one in any case because it didn't require a special majority. The whistleblower legislation, to be fully effective, would require a special majority. Then we will see if they well and truly want to put in this country the machinery to fight corruption. We brought that law to the parliament early in our term, as we promised you in the campaign in 2015. As we got to the parliament, they demanded that it be brought to a committee. Once it gets into the committee, they start to play road interference. Delay, 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 obstruct, delay, obstruct. And when we had seen what they were going to be doing, we took that law out of committee. They can put in a minority report if they wish. We brought it back to the parliament. It is now before the parliament floor, and soon after Easter, pay attention, the parliament will be debating the legislation to put whistleblower protection in place in Trinidad and Tobago. So anybody in a ministry, in a state enterprise, or anywhere, you see wrongdoing by any person, you can then report it and be protected under law. That is missing in this country, and I am determined to put that in place. You heard Mr. Ember talking about the things that need to be done to give you the economic activity and to pay various things and so on and so on. When I talk to the experts from the university who work for us from time to time giving us data, because as a person who is trained the way I was trained, I know that you have to use data to make decisions. Not because you feel so, or you like so, or you look so. What does the data say? We are told that we don't have to have new tax laws to add taxes on people by law. What we need to do is to collect what we have agreed to collect already. If we collect it, where everybody is following the law and collecting the tax that is due to the state to service the country, there will be no need for additional taxation. Because the data shows that about 40% of the tax that is due is not collected for one reason or the other. 40%. That is 40 cents in a dollar. If we manage to collect 20 cents out of that 40, then we will be well on our way to funding the kinds of things that we have to fund now. So to improve our tax collection, not to increase taxation. No new law. The Revenue Authority is not bringing a law to increase tax here or to add a tax there. It is simply to collect what has to be collected from those who are liable to pay it. So we, in our campaign, said we, in this term, will bring in Trinidad and Tobago a Revenue Authority. From the time the UNC heard that, Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, a leader of whatever kind, I don't know. The minute she heard that, her idea of leadership in this country, her interest in this country, drove her to say, we're not supporting that. And they are opposing it under the guise at the PSA of protecting workers' jobs. We have made it quite clear that the Revenue Authority will see additional jobs being created because it's more work. And those who are in the BIR system now, they will have the option to stay in there, or if they don't like the new arrangements, as protected by law and agreement with the union, they are free to move to wherever else a position is available in the public service. What more can we say to the people of Trinidad and Tobago? Except the voices that will say, leave it how it is. Leave it the way it is, because I can tell you tonight, the way it is now is not working for you, but it's working very well for some other people who you don't see and you don't hear. So they tell you just leave it just so. Don't change it, don't interfere with it. And they bring up all kinds of manima about what's going to happen, and the sky going to fall in, and this going to happen, and that going to happen. All because they are not prepared to rectify the problem that we have identified. This government, during this period, during this term, what we have set out to do is to identify the problems that have not already been identified, deal with the ones that have been identified, and set about to rectify it to give us a better situation and a better chance. And it's against that background that we early in our tenure realized it doesn't matter what else we embark upon, but in the meantime, in between time, we have to do our best in oil and gas and make sure we get our best earnings from those two products, because we don't have any other products that are available to hand right now to give us the revenue required. Of course, those who operate in classrooms only and think that the nation is a classroom will say, well, you ought to diversify the economy. Yes, that is so, but you don't diversify the economy today for today or this week for next week. The diversification requires a lot of building foundations, and upon that foundation will spring certain structures for down the road. So you do the actions to diversify, but in terms of your immediate sustenance, oil and gas would have to remain the area of focus for us for the time being. So we came into office, and what did we meet, and what were we treating with in the last 3 years? The last 3 years, the most important thing we have been treating with is the whole question, first and foremost, of getting investment in the oil and gas industry, mainly gas. You will hear Barataria and a handful of other UNC board pieces say to you that whatever gas production that's taking place now is something that they did. Well, let's give Jack his jacket. They too did realize what I've just said, that we have to stimulate the production of gas in the country to fund our gas export industry to get earnings to service the country. They understood that too, and they took a step to do it. The step that they took was to give serious tax breaks, which are offerings of write-offs to the oil companies to do it in the fastest possible way, saying, unlike what was there before, where if you spend money in the drilling and development program, it is written off against your taxes 20%, 20%, 20% going forward and so on. That means you will get it written off over time, but you don't deprive the tax base in any 1 year of a huge amount of revenue going to write off that. So they agreed to that. They agreed to instant write-off. But they thought that would have stimulated the industry. Well, it did not. Because what we met was the oil companies, the gas companies coming to us and saying, if we produce this gas, we are not happy with the price at which gas is sold in Trinidad. Because remember, we have been in the LNG business for 25 years. Contracts in that kind of business are long-term contracts. 25 years ago, gas was cheap, and they were willing and happy to sell it to you because there was no other market for it. So the contracts that were coming to an end were cheap gas contracts. And in the meantime, the companies are saying, to find more gas to maintain this level of consumption, we have to go into deeper water and spend more money, and therefore the cheap price that we are getting cannot fund the industry. And the dung tools. That is what we met. There was no agreement on a new gas price. So the biggest assignment for this government was to ensure that between NGC, our national gas company, and the BPs, the Shell and the EOG, that there was an agreement on a gas price that both sides could live with, and that we had to do. Without a gas price, BP, EOG, and later on, well, Shell came in towards the end. Were there waiting and watching. What did the government of Trinidad and Tobago do in 2015 in that situation? They watched them too. The government watched them, and the gas users had their contracts on month to month. These are billion-dollar contracts. This is not a carnival band where after Ash Wednesday you wear the costume, you know. This is a billion-dollar industry being put in a month-to-month arrangement, and I can tell you, by the time I settled into the prime ministership, I was dealing and talking to people in that business who were talking about leaving Trinidad and Tobago. Our gas production was down to 3.1 BCF per day, requiring 4.2 to be comfortable. We down at 3.1. What does the prime minister do then? Encourage the two sides to negotiate, and then they came to a deadlock. Because NGC is saying the price that they're offering, we can't contract to that because then we can't sell it. And the companies were saying the price that NGC want is too low, we can't produce for that. So both sides down tools. What does a prime minister do? Well, any prime minister who is sober in the morning and who understands the length of day knows that his job is to get to those who are the decision makers at NGC and those who are the decision makers at Shell and BP, at their head office, at their boardroom, and say, come back to the table and don't leave until you have an agreement. Well, I did that. You know, in looking for something to throw at me and my government, as far as Kamla Prasad, Bisesa, Botiwari, and people others, that is a bad thing, you know. You would hear Munilal say, the prime minister. I never negotiate any contract. What I did was to get the negotiators to move from where they were and move to a place where we could have announced that both sides are happy, and now immediately the investment begins to flow. So it's flowing now. The gas production is going up. And even as I speak to you now, we are 80 miles off our East Coast, drilling in deep water. And those of you who are good at praying, I'm asking you to pray, because our future will be very bright if we are successful in that area. So we are 80 miles off the East Coast. How many of you saw in the papers yesterday or today that there was an attempt at piracy off our North Coast? So just off the North Coast, piracy. But our lifeblood is now to come from 80 miles off in the Atlantic Ocean. And we don't have vessels in the Coast Guard that can go out there and stay out there to protect that. So what does the Prime Minister do? We have to get vessels in our Coast Guard that can be out there, that can stay out there, that can protect us out there. So when a previous Prime Minister by the name of Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa canceled the contract that were in place, put there by the Patrick Manning government, and told us that we don't need to be in the sea. We're fighting crime in the road in Belmont. It only demonstrates an ignorance that is beyond comprehension. If there was any urgency, any extreme urgency in Trinidad and Tobago from a national security and from an economic standpoint, it was an urgency to get vessels in our Coast Guard that can patrol our waters and protect our gas fields. So we went to Australia and we tapped into a fund that the Australian government has, and we have 2 Coast Guard vessels going to be, currently under construction to come here next year. And when they come here, they will give us the ability, one of those vessels will be out there for 28 days. The vessel has an endurance to be in that ocean for 28 days, and then it comes back in, and then the other one goes out. You need at least 2. If you have 1, when that one comes in, you have 0. But to have round-the-clock protection, you need 2. We've ordered 2, and ladies and gentlemen, we borrow money to spend money like that and not to thief. And come Satmaraj or Shatmaraj, however his name is, we've ordered 2 ferries, and I look forward to the day when you will join me at the Port of Spain Harbor to receive the first one of those ferries before it goes to Scarborough. And The Tobagonians, as described, who sat no? I know that there are tens of thousands of Tobagonians who are anxiously waiting and looking for the day when we will get our new vessels to make sure that we have a proper link between Trinidad and Tobago. We borrow money to do that, and that is money well spent. You hear them talking about agriculture, agriculture, agriculture. The only thing they know about agriculture is the word. The word. You know, I was in the parliament in 1991, 95, and they all like to take on this mantle of agriculture. Half of them never put their hand in dirt yet. And when I tell them, my father was a cane farmer. My father worked as a laborer at Usine factory, Usine St. Madeleine grounds, cutting cane. They couldn't understand that. Tobagonian from Tobago come to Trinidad and work in the cane fields. I don't use that in my politics, but that is part of my heritage. We produce our own cane in Tobago and have our own mill and make our own sugar and go and sell it in the market. That's what I grew up with. But of course, you know, if you are going to expand the agricultural effort, especially planting, you have to have planting material. There was hardly any planting material available. Even as we said, we are going to go on a drive to increase our planting effort, no planting material available. So what we had to do, the first thing we had to do was to establish, renovate, and operate new nurseries. Nurseries at Komuto, Upgrade Mappa, W. Claro, St. Augustine was there, and we produced 3 million pieces of planting material, 3 million seedlings. As I speak to you now, in many areas, we're waiting for the rain to fall because we have planting material to plant. And what are we planting? We started to prepare seedlings to replace hardwoods that we've lost, softwoods, and fruit trees. You hear all they talk about cocoa, cocoa, cocoa? Half of them were talking about cocoa, cocoa, have no idea what you're talking about, you know. One of them sent me a text saying cocoa, cocoa spelled C-O-C-O, you know. But any serious farmer on the North Coast, the valleys of the North Coast or in Tobago will tell you, if you go and plant cocoa now, with that population of parrots we have roaming the country, you're only feeding bird. So what you have to do is to have a program where you plant back forest trees and fruit trees around so that the birds can be fed away from your cocoa. Because if you don't have a good population of fruiting trees around the cocoa estates, the birds are going to feed on the cocoa. So no amount of cocoa talk in Parliament or in the papers could give you the beans you need. So Minister Rambarat has laid the foundation. And some of you, I invite members of the media to pay some attention to these kinds of development. Follow one or two of you. Follow somebody in agriculture. Go to the nursery and see what they're doing. We've had a bad setback though. We had about 300,000 citrus plants ready for planting last planting season. And just as we were about to distribute those plants, we discovered that we had imported into Trinidad and Tobago a very damaging disease. Come out of China, it's called Hong Gombling, something like that. Where the leaves turn yellow and green, the fruit goes sour, and it cannot be rectified. And it spreads. So we had to destroy all of those seedlings. And then worse, when we came to the nursery in St. Augustine, we discovered the nursery was infected as well. So what we have done, and I want to acknowledge and thank Dr. John Allen, who is the advisor to the Prime Minister in Agriculture. He has worked overtime with the University of Florida and other connections he has abroad to try to get resistant strains And we now have 25,000 plants getting ready for planting out of a new strain of citrus that hopefully can resist this yellowing disease that we're talking about. So these are some of the perils of agriculture. And we stick with it. And we must stick with it. And this government is going to encourage some young people to get involved in agriculture. And what is being done at Nutrients to encourage farmers to work under different and modern conditions, those things are going to be encouraged. And only then will we get any improvement in agriculture. You know, today I was going through some documents and I just had to shake my head. How many of you would have heard opposition people talk about how we shut down Caroni and we treat Indian people so bad and it's so racial and some of them hate the PLM until the third and fourth generation? How many of you know that the closure of Caroni, the cost of that closure in supporting the workers who had lost their position with Caroni, cost you, the taxpayers, $9 billion? How many of you know that? And it is budgeted to cost you $11 billion because there's $2 billion more to be spent. But money is already spent, including a $750 million cash separation. The total cost in terms of when they fed the land that they got, the pension upgrade, the cash in hand and so on, $9 billion. But you will hear opposition politicians talk about how people have been thrown on the street and kicked out and treated in the worst possible way in a little economy like Trinidad and Tobago, where $9 billion is nothing to be sneezed at. And since Mr. Satmaraj wants to curse Tobagonians on the basis of the cost of the ferry between Port of Spain and Scarborough, I want to ask Satmaraj tonight, how many people in Tobago got $1 from that $9 billion? But nobody from Tobago is shouting across the water racial or vile epithets against those who got the support of the state in circumstances that warranted that support. Ladies and gentlemen, our country must begin to do business differently. This must be an opportunity for us to do things differently. And you will see in this country a different style of governance. You will see a different style of responsibility. And you must join it so that the outcome will be better for your children. When we talk about institutions, that is what will provide the strength and the backbone to this new society that we're talking about. Some of the leaders in this country, especially the ones in the political arena, have absolutely no regard for institutions at all. They are all about personalities. Person. They can only talk about Rowley in the personal capacity, me and my father. They could talk about Faris and the building, his family building that's being rented. They could talk about how much money they have. But it is the institutions in this country that will give us the strength to survive. You would have seen presidents come and presidents go, and you would know which ones have contributed to the well-being and the good order in Trinidad and Tobago. You would have seen parliamentarians come and parliamentarians go, and you would see and know which ones have contributed to the well-being and the welfare of Trinidad and Tobago. You would know that our Election and Boundaries Commission is one of the best in the Commonwealth. And we in Trinidad and Tobago, we have fought a number of elections here since 1956. You win some, you lose some. Fortunately for us under the Balize, we usually win. But I can tell you, I was there when this PNM lost the Scarborough seat by 1 vote, and we did not ask for a recount. We accepted the will of the people in Scarborough. Orville London, who served as Chief Secretary of Tobago for 4 terms unbroken. The first time he fought in Signal Hill, he lost by, I think, 10 votes. We have a candidate in San Fernando, we call him One Vote Lynch. Win by 1 vote. And of course, those who were in office then on the other side, they didn't denigrate the EBC. They didn't try to destroy the institutions. Mrs. Williams knows what I'm talking about. 1 vote to win by. But by the time the next election came around, he had been such a good councillor, he won by hundreds. That's how it's done. Ladies and gentlemen, I started my political career running in Tobago West in 1981 against the might of A&R Robinson and the DAC. I lost by 360-something votes. I will tell you it's the best election I ever took part in. Even though I did not win it, it was the best campaign that I ever took part in. But not so with Kamala Persad-Bissessar and the UNC. They are about damaging and destroying. We had a general election. We had a general election in this country. You, the people, had had enough of them. You came out in the rain and you voted the PLM into office. Trinidad and Tobago was the only place I know of where an opposition gone to court to tell the court that the EBC caused people to vote. Everywhere else in the world, the argument is that people are prevented from voting. But in Trinidad and Tobago, under Kamala Persad-Bissessar, they're making an argument that EBC extended the voting hours and allowed people to vote. 7 seats are deemed to be marginal. They won 2, we won 5. They're telling the court that the 5 that the PNM win must be struck down, election petition. But the 2 that they won, they could keep. They won Barataria by 500 votes. But I'm putting them on notice now, they're not winning it again. They won Barataria in the same election by 500 votes. We won San Fernando by 3,000 votes. They're going in court asking the court election petition. Well, of course, they lost, as they should, as they must. Petitions of that nature end in our court here. It can't go to the Privy Council. They now owe the PNM millions of dollars in legal fees. Have you heard any of them talking about paying the PNM its money? But what they're doing, they're trying to reopen the election petition through a series of roundabout conspiracies, hoping to end up in a situation where the election petition cases are open, so they will escape paying the cost. And of course, if they're lucky, they still think that the court could strike down those 5 seats. You know. So, we see some social media under the earth arrangement, somebody living underground somewhere, turns over the stone and come out with something saying that some Venezuelan has a Trinidad and Tobago ID card and a Trinidad and Tobago passport. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think that should have surprised anybody, because it's not today people have been trying to get their hands on documents of Trinidad and Tobago. And the reason is that those documents are valuable. They're valuable. And people who come into our country, some of them with criminal intent, can find the means of trying to get into the system. We saw a complaint and we got a report that there were people trying to get birth certificates in the registrar's office. These are security issues. America with 300 million people and the biggest army and the biggest navy and the biggest secret service, people still copying their cards. Now I see some UNC spokesperson saying that the thing in the papers looks so real that it must have come from the EBC. Well, idiot. The reason why counterfeit does work is because it has to look like the thing. Whether it's money, certificate, ID card, it has to look like it. If it doesn't look like it, the first person you show will call the police. Now, based on that fellow's interpretation, and he identified himself as a former employee of the EBC, the leader of the opposition in Trinidad and Tobago now comes out and makes the most outrageous statement against the Election and Boundaries Commission. She comes out in her usual style, saying that the PNM and the EBC have conspired, are conspiring to give Venezuelans ID cards to pad election in Trinidad and Tobago. And she goes further. She calls for action against every employee of the EBC. And that is after the EBC came out in quick order, checked their records and said, this man, this name, this card forms no part of our database. I want to put to the vote tonight. Who do you believe, the EBC or Kamla Prasad Bisesa? And she doesn't care, you know. She is now calling for the damnation and brimstone to come down on the head of every employee of the EBC. Because somebody say that the forgery must have come from the EBC. Well, if it comes from the EBC, it's not a forgery. But these kinds of statements would go all around the world. Our Election and Boundaries Commission staff are highly regarded in the Commonwealth, and very frequently all over the world they are asked to come and play a part in other countries' electoral processes. When Kamla Prasad Bisesa go out and put on the internet and on the world that they're conspiring with the government in Trinidad to thief election, what will that do to the institution? What does that do to the staff's, morale? And it is just one lie, and she knows it. One incident which is being investigated. And I could tell you now, the only reason why she could go on a UNC platform and make that misstatement the subject of her discourse is because she has nothing to say about this PNM government that is credible, believable, or useful. I am now, when she was Prime Minister, by this time in her term, I had already dropped 2 votes of no confidence in her skirt. Up to now, she has not had what it takes to file a vote of no confidence in this government, because who am afraid, frightened now. So they filed a piece of motion in the parliament there in a kind of roundabout way. I think it's both you already filed it this week. Some kind of bastardized version of a motion. Of course, that motion, being a private member's motion, will only allow maybe 2 or 3 speakers to speak. You could start at 1 o'clock, finish 6 o'clock. If you want to criticize the government in the way that you are doing, and you think you have substance in your argument, didn't she say she was going to file a vote of no confidence a few months ago? Kamla, where is the vote of no confidence? Who thief it? But I am very proud that I could be leading a government in this very difficult time, and the opposition afraid to file a vote of no confidence. In this very difficult time, and I don't want any of you to believe that we are in the land of milk and honey and plain sailing in front of us, like parents who brought up children in very difficult circumstances, but know in their heart of hearts that those children will do well. We are in very difficult situations here, and we know that we can get out of it, and someday in the future, we are going to be doing well. We know that. We are fighting with debt. We are managing cash flow. We are looking at support for those who need the support most. So every single one of our social support systems are in place, and social support services are available in the same way they were available when we had money, because we give that priority. We have not shut down a single one of those programs. Here's the big point. We cut gate. Ladies and gentlemen, even before there was a collapse of the revenue, Gate was under the knife because a significant part of Gate had gone astray, and there was money being wasted in Gate. And the review just happened to have come in our time, and we did what a sensible government will do, which is to make the adjustment. Gate is still alive and well, and it's being funded and being utilized, but not in the same way as when money was being wasted in there. But as far as they're concerned, that's a big point. And it's a big point because they have nothing else. Have nothing else to talk about. Nothing else to talk about. So they're mentioning Gate. You know, ladies and gentlemen, as we talk about a better time and creating a new society and creating a better space in which corruption does not sit on the throne, we have to understand that we are better off in that way than the way things are going now. How could we have been putting this argument to you, but pretending not to know what was happening at Petrotrin? How could we? We said to you that we know the very importance of the oil industry, Petrotrin. But because we had found ourselves being an importer of oil and refining more imported oil and losing money, we had to take the decision to stop operating a business model based on importing oil, refining, and lose money. So we came out of the refining business because we don't have the oil to keep our refinery going without large importation. And since we're not refining our oil, we could sell our crude oil. They jump out and say, our crude oil is sour. It has sulfur, and you can't sell it in the world. And the only way it could have got into the market is if it was produced at the refinery and they sell it as oil, as gas and diesel and so on. So if you have no refinery, you can't sell the oil. And you know who was carrying that story? A former Minister of Energy. So she thought that that was a good story to launch a political career on. I could tell you now, all the occasions we have sold the oil that we otherwise would have put in the refinery, we have got a price higher than the benchmark price of West Texas Intermediate. We thought we'd have got a price lower. Not only are we selling it, but we are getting a couple dollars higher than the posted price because the product is marketable. The only problem we have is that we are not producing enough of it. So the whole model is to set about to produce more of it. And that is what Heritage Company is doing. So we are not refining oil, but we are turning our effort into producing more oil, crude oil, and sell that crude oil. A number of our citizens would have been affected by that negatively because they had their livelihood in the refining business. But it came to a point where that was bad business and we had to get out of it. And like the current situation, as we got out of it, we didn't throw them on the street. $2.3 billion in cash went to them. And they still have a good pension for those who are pensionable at this time. It might not be a perfect situation for some of them, but it certainly isn't destitution. And more than that, that infection was cauterized and kept there. It didn't spread to the rest of the country, Mr. Imber told you. It was that operation of Petrotrin that was dragging down the national financial situation in the government accounts. What did they want us to do? Pretend that it wasn't so? Well, we took the steps to fix it. And they are out there campaigning, hoping that the government will be punished for doing that. But you know, it would be a good deed that would not have gone unpunished. Because the statement is that the many are good deeds, you get punished for it. This is one of them. We're going through the transition period. Things are going in the right direction. There are hiccups here and there, but we'll fix them along the way, and in the not too distant future when things are going smoothly and everything is running smoothly and up and running well, you would have seen that this was the best thing to do for the economy and the finances of Trinidad and Tobago. Had to make a decision. And anytime a government is afraid to make a good decision, it is going to make a bad decision. As simple as that. But we are supposed to be sufficiently educated and intelligent to know what is good for the country and what is good for you and what is bad for the country and what is bad for you. Let us not sell ourselves short. Let us do what has to be done to rectify what is not going well, so that it can go well and to give our children and our grandchildren a chance. Many of those who are out on the forefront now, especially in the political arena, they've sucked from the well the best that this country has to offer, and they have deprived others from having it. I don't know where the conscience is, you know. Because when I stand in front of a secondary school at 2 o'clock, and I see those children pouring out, it's a very sobering event for me. Because I keep asking myself, what does tomorrow hold for them? What are they coming out to meet? And if I know that I've been thieving public money, my conscience wouldn't sit well in me. But there are those who couldn't be bothered. Just give me another chance to come back and do it again. Right now they're promising they're trading the whole government already, giving out already, you know. This one getting that one getting this. You know what they're telling contractors now? They are telling contractors to support them. And the monies that are owed, that the government is contesting some of those contractors with. Monies that the government is saying to some contractors, we are not paying it because we have enough information and evidence that some of this is not owed and some of it is not to be paid because corrupt practice was involved, and we'll take it to court in those instances. They are telling the contractors, don't worry, we're calling for election now. Election coming just now, we're coming back and we're going to pay you, and the fete will start again. Well, if you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, want that to happen, it will happen. The only way that will not happen is because you, the people, will have to intervene to make sure that it doesn't happen. We fought and got the CLICO assets. We've created a national investment fund, and I hope many of you in here would have taken the opportunity to save and invest in that fund so that you can get your dividends that are being paid now. The fund is operating quite well. Many of the young people among us, their aspiration is to get married if they do, start a family if they must, but they want a home of their own. They can't go to the marketplace. We have said to you, and I'm pleased to tell you now, that in the next few weeks, you should be able to pay into that housing bond so that when a house becomes available to you, you will have saved towards it. And the way we're doing it, you pay into the bond at the HDC, whoever it's done, and you are identified with a particular project and a particular unit in that project. And as you're saving, the unit is being built, because it's one way of mobilizing your own money to build your own house. So we are encouraging you to save, because I can tell you many young people And some not so young people will be telling you, I applied to the HTC 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and my name ain't called. You call the name. They have sent to pay for the housing. And that's when they invoke, but I vote for you. Don't go so. The houses are not gifts. There are big subsidies involved, there's support involved, but there's a payment involved. Either by rent, rent to own, or by mortgage. So if you really want to have a good chance of getting a home in the public program, we are encouraging you, if you have the means, whatever means you have, to get involved in the housing bond program. You know, some of my opponents, when they talk about this country, they think it's Biafra, you know. But Buju come in. Then we gonna know who hungry, who's suffering, who's starving. Buju come in. Alright? All I'm saying to you, the same way you're finding the money to go buy Buju, find money to put in the housing bond. Especially if you have children. Especially if you have a wife or a husband. Because the first thing you're required to do, as a man, I'm told, or I should say as a woman, is to try to contribute to that place of your own that's called a home. Because when you do that, your wealth begins to grow. Most families in this country, the most valuable possession they have is the house in which they live. And you want to be in that position to have that wealth. And it's building the national wealth as well. So I want to encourage you, when the Minister of Finance in the next few weeks put the housing bond in place, those of you who already have a house, it will also be a good investment because it will pay a good return. So it's not only those who are looking for a house, you know, it's those who are also looking for a return on the savings you have. And when you do that, you'll be partnering with the government in solving one of the many problems in the country. This, I heard the Archbishop say that we are too angry in Trinidad and Tobago. I think that is a statement that needs to be reflected upon by every citizen. Because what angers you? If you're angry, something has to be angering you. What angers you? Is it that there are no opportunities for you to improve? Or is it that you have not taken the opportunities that are available? Is it that someone is being oppressive to you personally? Or is it that the country's circumstance cannot meet the needs that you have aspired to? But in that time of anger, there are also, in this country, so many things that we must be grateful and thankful for. Let us be a grateful and thankful people. As we compare ourselves with others, you will find, if the comparison is fair and reasonable, that Trinidad and Tobago, this gem of the Southern Caribbean, even in our most difficult times, we're not doing too badly. And I must say, had we not done what we have done, or what we are doing, it could easily have been a whole lot worse. It is the good management and the honest governance in Trinidad and Tobago that allows us to be where we are today. As bad as some people think that it is. But we are not standing still. We are aiming to keep moving ever upward, ever forward. So tonight, I want to say to you, the people of Barataria, that your country, the government which you support, and I don't mean the PNM, I mean government as of the country, the state, is carrying a significant burden, contributing to whatever life you have. Whatever the life you have, the state is carrying a piece of your burden. In many instances, that burden is funded by debt. So when you hear people talking about, don't borrow, and debt, is you they're talking about. Because if you are made to pay your full cost of carriage, so that there'll be no debt, you will have to do something else with your step. And of course, they could always tell you who gone on the breadline. If we rectify something and it involves the loss of some jobs, never a pleasant experience, but they can't tell you and will never tell you how many jobs being created by the projects that are underway. We have a number of projects underway, every single one of them involving many tens or hundreds of persons on the job. And the only person who will make reference to that, the People's National Movement. I heard Jolene John say they open an office in Tunapuna, and it's called the Corridor Movement or something. Jolene, the UNC is not a movement. The movement is the People's National Movement. The UNC has a very long name, of which the UNC is only the first part. The rest of the name is UNC. Where they do. The rest of the name is where they do, not movement. So, PLM members and supporters, fellow citizens all from all walks of life, the best opportunity this country has to overcome its difficulties and to make the best of our opportunities, our talent and our potential is to stand with the People's National Movement. Thank you.